You're 40 or nearly 40, and even though you work out, you notice your body changing differently than before. That is, the amount of effort you put in doesn't give you the results you want to get. You used to lose weight easily and had no muscle pain, but now losing weight is hard and your muscles hurt. You used to have no belly fat and always had abs, but now you're getting flabby. Something is happening so that your body stops listening to you and you don't get satisfaction from the gym. You try harder, silly, but just get more tired without any results. Today, we'll go over how you should train if you're around 40 years old, or rather, after 40. As someone who is basically already 40 years old, I'll try to help you with this today. So watch until the end, and we'll go over the main mistakes and key rules. And I'll give you some basic recommendations. How should you structure your workout and recovery plan so that everything in your life goes well? Let's start with this. I used to compete professionally in bodybuilding, and I've trained a lot of students, and you know that every athlete has their golden period. For example, in soccer, you don't see 50-year-olds playing, and especially not in bodybuilding. Take the super heavyweight category, for example. Well, there's an age after which, no matter how many supplements you use or how hard you train, you just won't become an Olympia champion at 60. Why? Because not everything is determined just by the amount of food you eat, the volume of your training, recovery, and hormones. There is still a resource, and a new car will always be different from a used one. There are biological rhythms, there are changes in the skin. If you take me, I have gray hair now, I have wrinkles, but we tend to think that the body only ages on the skin. Visually, you get a Botox injection, everything looks fine, it looks good, but inside, everything is happening the same way. Exactly the same changes. As a surgeon, when operating on an elderly patient, I place the laparoscopic ports and inflate the abdomen. I go in and see. Believe me, if you just show me the organs from the inside, I can tell approximately how old the person is. There is a big difference in blood supply and in appearance. That's how I do it. Well, you don't even have to say anything. I'll say, right here, that's an elderly person. The tissues break down and soften, similar to when you access the kidneys. That's why it's not just a number in the passport. In reality, it could be higher than in the passport or it could be lower. It depends on what kind of activity you were involved in, so to speak. That's why we're different inside at different ages. I want you to get some benefit from this. To do that, we need to understand. I remember myself, I could just train every day. There was a period when I had 2 workouts a day, and at the same time I kept working and performing surgeries. At night, I could go out with friends, remember those wild times, skip sleep, and still show up to work in the morning. Now, if I don't get any sleep, well, it's not going to be very good. What's going on? This doesn't happen overnight. We just mentioned the number 40, right? And actually, it's just such an important number when the body starts to stumble. Well, give or take 5 years. If you remember all the doctor's recommendations, they tell you to get a gastroscopy, do checkups, take tumor marker tests, go get an ultrasound, go check your carotid arteries for plaques. All this isn't for when you're 20. They tell you to do all this at 35, 40. This is a critically important period when we accumulate a certain amount of damage and errors in the body, when some resources are already worn out. That's why, for instance, childbirth risks rise notably after age 35-40. So what really changes after 40? Well, naturally, testosterone starts decreasing as early as age 25 or 30, which is likely what you first thought of. But by this time, you reach the numbers where you start to feel it. How does it work? Look, every organ has a saturation curve. For example, in the prostate gland, it's about 12 nanomoles. What does that mean? That the prostate gland won't really notice the difference between a value of 15 or 25 or 30. And that's why the amount of testosterone won't affect the organ. But as soon as you go beyond a certain value, you start to feel it. Your bones feel it, your ligaments feel it. Testosterone deficiency leads to cognitive changes, including your behavior, your aggressiveness, your desire, your mood. All of this starts to change. So yes, testosterone. What happens to elderly people? 40 isn't elderly, but you don't become elderly in a single day. Thin legs, thin arms, little muscle, little strength. I had a video where I said that a man's grip strength after 50, and really any elderly person's after 55 or 60, determines their life expectancy and level of risk. Why? Because there's a lot behind grip strength. It reflects the state of your nervous system, your ligaments, and your muscles. Grip isn't separate, it's just a representation. That's why sarcopenia happens second. Muscles go away, because before all of this was maintained on its own. And now, to keep them and not lose 1 to 2% per year, you have to work on them. But many don't work on them or play sports. Recovery and metabolic processes slow down. And I, as a surgeon, see this too. An operation I perform on a 20-year-old or a 45-year-old is the same. The medications and procedures are identical. Believe me, healing in young people goes much better. Tissues divide faster, and we see the other side of this as well. In young people, if cancer develops, it's more aggressive because the cells divide faster. That's why cancer prognosis is always worse in young people and even worse in children since their bodies are still growing. That's why recovery is slower after 40. Yes, it's slower. Joints and ligaments become more vulnerable. Absolutely. I have a friend, Dr. Skipenko, he operated on my knee, and when we talked, I was in the hospital ward. I looked around, thought there would only be athletes there. No, there weren't just athletes, there were guys my age, and many of them weren't athletes. Injuries add up. I tore a ligament here, strained it there, and sometimes didn't stretch enough. And at a certain point, it's just a snap. We have a pull-up bar in the Ordinatskaya. We were playing the ladder game, and we were doing pull-ups, pull-up after pull-up, and there were probably 2 sets left. I jump down, my cruciate tears, my meniscus shatters, and I think I have to win. And I keep going. The staff are watching, they can vouch for it. I did another set, 1, then hopped into the office on 1 leg. My knee ended up with a hematoma. Over time, damage builds up in the heart and blood vessels. We also shouldn't forget that this is a separate organ, our circulatory system, which we damage every day. Through what we eat, through what we drink, through what we don't do, and through what we do. That's why all of this creates a long list of things that change your body, and you shouldn't treat it like the body you had when you were 15 or 18 years old. And that's why it's critically important not to work out just like my friend or like I did when I was 20, or like someone I want to look like, with amazing genetics and a sports background at 30 years old, but to do it wisely. If before it was to impress someone, now, unless we're talking about something professional, it's really about preserving yourself for as long and as well as possible. And when I talk, for example, about longevity, I always mean active longevity, about active longevity. My friend Volodya Filipov runs the Moscow Longevity Project in Moscow. It's very important to understand that how you face old age is not formed at 55 or 60, but is shaped almost from your school years. These are the choices you make every day. What are the main mistakes you might be making if you're over 40? Trying to train like you did at 20 just because you used to is a common mistake. You know, I have a saying, back then even pubic hair didn't grow. That doesn't mean you're still the same person. A common second habit is working out to failure. You see, I notice people come to the gym and they feel like they absolutely have to go to failure, like they have to push until they can barely lift the weight. That's not very good. It's sometimes needed, but consistently training this way, especially naturally, can exhaust your nervous system, damage ligaments, and eventually cause injury. Copy, especially when other people's training programs appear in the chat, which aren't adapted to your needs, aren't adapted to your injuries, aren't tailored to your specifics. That's what a proper training program should be. In general, the methodology of fitness is built on selecting what's right for you, so that everything works out well for you. And there are a lot of factors that need to be considered. It's not just about picking up weights from there, putting them here, and if you can do it, then it means it suits you. That's not how it works at all. Cutting out cardio, that's a critical mistake, a big mistake. Who cuts out cardio? If you don't have excess weight, many of you think that cardio is only about losing weight, like it's just about losing weight. Especially when these Ozempics appeared, everyone started losing weight. People stopped doing cardio. Why? Yeah, you took the shot and all your fat is gone. It's so simple. That's it. Why should I go on diets? Why should I do cardio? People don't do cardio just to be skinny. Cardio is the best way to train your cardiovascular system, your mitochondria, your blood vessels. And the paradox we see now is that people are skinny but not healthy. There are a huge number of nations where people are skinny. For example, in India, there are a lot of skinny people, but they are not healthy endocrinologically. And the problem is How did you even realize and learn that cardio is beneficial? It wasn't always understood this way. People didn't run 200 years ago. Here's a vivid example. Conductors in England noticed that, for some reason, conductors live longer than drivers. At the same time, both groups could be thin, so they took groups and compared. Here are thin people and here are thin people. These ones move a lot, and their lifespan is 10-15 years longer. They have fewer heart attacks and strokes. And they found out that movement is life, so even if you're thin, if we want to live long, it's absolutely necessary to do cardio. So the main mistake, which I would probably point out, is skipping cardio and training without a checkup. Training is always a load. Sometimes you're not ready for it, and sometimes you go too easy on yourself. That's why I wear a tracker and monitor my recovery, taking an individual approach to my stats and adjusting my workouts. The first thing you need to understand is that physical activity is a must, no matter how you look. Physical activity is absolutely necessary. It's protection against osteoporosis, meaning your bones will be stronger. A vivid example is our cosmonauts who spend a long time in orbit. When they return, let's say, their skeleton becomes thinner, meaning bone density decreases. Without load on our skeleton, the skeleton starts to thin out. And that's why a grandmother who does sports will have lower risks and chances of falling and breaking a bone, sarcopenia, muscles. They require maintenance as they are major resources. We also have a vivid example, chemotherapy drugs. I can say for sure that this person will tolerate this drug easily. It's harder because he has more muscles, amino acids, and protein reserves when he can't eat, when he's feeling bad. People with more muscle mass tolerate surgical intervention better. We're not talking about this. Hypertrophy caused by anabolic drugs. No, we're talking about physiological training. If you have a lot of muscle, especially if you're over 40, you'll be healthier and you'll have fewer risks during the same surgical procedures. Diabetes, including insulin resistance, is important to monitor. The best way to combat insulin resistance is regular exercise and lowering body fat. That's why when we work out, our entire ligament system is engaged. Muscles and the central system. This is the best prevention for cognitive dysfunction, deformation, age-related changes, and transformation of your brain. It is essential to do strength training specifically. If a woman says, "I don't want to get too muscular," you won't just from regular gym workouts. Without special aids, you won't get too muscular. Guys, this is for you too. Even if you work out hard, if you see huge men with shoulders like this, it's an enormous amount of work. You don't just accidentally become like that. What exercises? Well, of course, I love them. In this context, when we're talking about a 40-year-old, it's a basic exercise. It's a basic exercise like bench press or rows, but the weight should be reasonable. So when we're talking about deadlifts, for example, or squats, for some reason everyone thinks you have to push yourself to the limit, right? It's a way to immediately affect a huge number of tissues in your body and a huge amount overall. You remember about the bottles and the delightful visual. You should use a weight that doesn't make your form suffer, even by 5%. Those 2-3 sets with all sorts of sounds, hissing and grunting. No, you should do it perfectly. That is so that...
I could do it calmly, like 30 times, for example, right?
Well, not 30, but I think in the range of 15 to 12. But with perfect technique. If it's super easy, there's not much benefit either. But the most important thing is that technique is more important than weight. If the weight is too heavy, lower it, but do the exercise more slowly. If we're discussing exercises besides deadlifts, maybe add some supersets. Reduce the rest time between sets. But I still recommend increasing the weight last. The same goes for progression. There was an interesting study, it was about runners, and there the highest injury rate was among those who increased their training volume, specifically the volume. So it's the increase in single session volume that gives the highest risk of injury. If you want to make progress, go ahead and progress, but still, don't do it through your, genitals, don't think with testosterone, use your brain. Try to go slowly, and often. So today we're talking about natural training, what are its features? Today you might be able to lift 20% more, but next time you might manage 10-15-20% less. So it's unpredictable for chemists. The results are more stable because they depend less on recovery. That's why you don't need to. Everything should be on paper. Everything should be recorded, so you have a general idea of how you should progress. Once again, the methodology of fitness. What's the most important medicine for the vessel? Subtitled by Dima Torzok. We've already mentioned this. Yes, cardio is not for losing weight again, it's for your blood vessels. It's the best way to make your mitochondria healthy. It's the best way to reduce your cancer risks. It's the best way to feel good. It's the best way to keep your mind sharp. And by the way, to improve your sleep. I heard
one story on a cardiologist's YouTube channel. He says that sitting still at work for 2, 3, 4 hours gives you much more harm than an evening workout can compensate for. If you sit still for many hours, certain processes start in your blood vessels. You can't compensate for these processes with an evening workout. He says that it's extremely important to move at least a little bit every 30-40 minutes.
You shouldn't view your activity only through the lens of those hour-and-a-half or hour-long gym workouts. Your activity isn't just about the gym. When I say everywhere, I mean refuse the bus if you have the chance. Walk up to the 5th floor if you can. Carry your bags. Try to move constantly. The higher your physical activity throughout the day, the better it will actually be for you. That's why cardio is medicine for your blood vessels. The best zone, if we're talking about longevity, is of course the second zone. And from time to time you need to push yourself, like I do. Yeah, everyone has their own way, once again under load. I mainly train in zone 2, but sometimes at occasional intervals. So I run, for example, at a speed of 8.5, and then I do 5-minute, well, not sprints, but increase the speed to 10. This is to keep pushing my body, but the second zone is determined by my heart rate monitor or my WHOOP bracelet. So I put my phone on the treadmill and control it there, watch a movie, or study different languages. How can you even tell if you don't have a heart rate monitor? How do you know? How do you figure it out? So we ask our operators, what can you say freely and calmly? That's the first zone. Good job. That's the second zone. So you can keep a conversation going with a feeling of slight breathlessness. No gasping for air, no sweating buckets. Sweat doesn't actually indicate how effective your cardio workout was. Many people crowd the stuffy cardio room, believing more sweat is better, but that's not true. The second zone is actually best. Exactly. If your goal is to burn fat and train your cardiovascular system, how often? Around 180 minutes weekly? Or about 3-4 workouts. It's not always running. It can be brisk walking. It's not always. They see some advertisement, buy new sneakers, maybe a couple of outfits, go for a run, get a stitch after 5 meters, and then quit everything. No, it's not to impress anyone. It's just so that your system works. It's cycling, sometimes it's rollerblading, it's swimming, it's Nordic walking, it's just regular walking. The duration, if we're talking about moderate exercise, a single session, well, I think it should be 30 minutes at least. 30 minutes. What else is important to work on, do you think, after 40? What is much more important to work on after 40 than at 20? Then legs? Not working out? Which direction should you develop? We have mentioned strength training, and cardio is essential too. Krauss doesn't agree. Almost. Well, you're close, yeah. Stretching, yes, is very important. Stretching is very important because both muscles and ligaments lose their elasticity. Stretching is essential. I've often seen that people who stretch are usually either beginners afraid of injury or professionals who've been injured. You shouldn't be at either extreme. You should remember that you need to start your workout with a little stretching and finish with it too, just for a couple of minutes. Ideally, at the end of the episode, I'll give you an algorithm, sort of a protocol for what to do if you just want to be functional and feel good. Dedicate an entire day just to stretching. And before and after your workout too, even after running, stretch before, stretch after, yoga, Pilates. Honestly, I don't like it. Well, it's just not my thing. But that's also valid, it's allowed. An important point, many people devote very little time to recovery, And most often, injuries happen to those athletes who don't recover enough. When you were young, you could train daily or twice a day without injury. Those who exhaust themselves will accumulate injuries. Sleep. The older you get, the more sensitive you become to sleep deprivation, meaning the lack of sleep, from 7 hours rest between heavy sets. With age, it will increase, so make sure to monitor it, watch your pulse, and see when it starts to stabilize. Always monitor your rest. It should be individualized. It's a very good tool. There are a lot of them now, but there weren't any before. These are fitness trackers, fitness bracelets, smartwatches. They show how ready you are for training and how much you're slacking off. So sometimes, for example, they help you go to a workout because you're recovered, and sometimes they make you rest because you think you're fine. That's why our brain doesn't always give us the right instructions. So if you have the opportunity, they only cost a couple thousand now. Buy them, use them. Stress control, breathing exercises, and cold baths also help a lot. You can do it for 3 minutes, post-workout or in the morning. Use sensors to monitor yourself. What do the sensors monitor? Modern ones monitor your electrocardiogram oxygen saturation, and they track your heart rate variability. That's an important factor I focus on. And what's also important, temperature matters too. Both decreases and increases basal temperature. And probably resting pulse is also very important. That's the pulse you have when you wake up in the morning. If your morning pulse increases by 5, 8, or 10 beats and consistently stays higher, it means your nervous system isn't recovering. What is required instrumentally and in the lab? Another downside is that you don't do a checkup. You need to check your hormones because often you start going to the gym due to excess weight, but you don't check your hormones. Testosterone, prolactin, estradiol, sex hormone binding, globulin, liver enzymes, alanine aminotransferase, aspartate aminotransferase, bilirubin, and that's it. Protein, iron, vitamin D, and homocysteine levels are essential because if it's high and you put stress on your body, you'll increase your risk of cardiovascular diseases. And what else do we need? Echo of the heart, heart echo, cardiogram, blood pressure monitoring. Probably, if you've never measured it, maybe it's high and you don't feel it. And bioimpedance, because very often when you go to the gym, you don't understand what's going on with you. And we repeat this once a year, which in my opinion is the optimal training that everyone can afford at any age and can do anywhere. That's it. There should be one rest day. I believe you shouldn't train every day. You still need to rest one day. One workout should focus on flexibility and mobility. That means with the both sides up. Do you know what a both sides up is? With the both sides up with ropes, with resistance bands. Sometimes it's with free weights. Sometimes it's with pull-up bars. So it's a workout for mobility and flexibility. Aim for 3 cardio sessions totaling 180 minutes. Alternatively, do 4 shorter, more frequent sessions each week. I'd suggest 2 strength training sessions, unless we're aiming for hypertrophy, which is tough after 40. If we're talking about longevity, then it's preferable to have 2 full body strength training sessions. But those included big, complex, heavy exercises like squats, deadlifts, and so on. We work the whole body twice a week with large training volumes. What else I'd like to advise our subscribers, our followers, is probably not to look at someone else, because very often someone motivates us to do something. Aside from getting you off the couch, it can actually cause a lot of harm, because you don't know that this guy, who looks like just some regular bar athlete, is actually a master of sports in 2 types of martial arts. Or what's behind him? He has 30 years of experience. Unfortunately, we get very used to devaluing other people's work. And we judge by appearances, we judge strength, how dangerous a person is, anything at all, so it doesn't matter what he looks like. I see this especially often in the gym, with the barbell. Just yesterday, recently, it actually happened yesterday. A guy is bench pressing 70, 176 pounds, barely struggling, and then some young guys come over, start using the barbell next to him, and also start bench pressing. And I've been watching him for a while, suddenly starts adding more weight because they started lifting heavier weights, and he tries to bench press it too. He's grunting, everything's shaking, and his form is breaking. He wouldn't do this otherwise. That's called ego lifting, right? The term is ego lifting, meaning you start lifting because of your ego. So he's putting himself in danger, at risk, simply that he could get pinned down or get elbow ligament injuries. Because there's always someone nearby doing more, there's always someone faster, smarter. More precisely, if our goal is the long-term perspective, functional longevity. You don't need to impress anyone. Do things your way. Clearly write down what, how much, and the amount. If it's tough, adapt your training. Sometimes do more, sometimes less. Currently, I'm doing running workouts, but my muscles get tight and I can't keep running, so I decide to finish on the elliptical. Everything is very individual. Unfortunately, we men don't know how to appreciate our health until it lets us down. It's only when a ligament snaps, even take me for example, they fixed me up, patched me up. First you remember, then you forget. We soon forget the bad things and start punishing ourselves again. That's why, like an old lady, I keep repeating myself. People ask, why do you keep saying the same thing? Because all the bad things in our world are repeated to us over and over again, through bad examples. And I think if there's an opportunity, we should repeat the good things too. Yes, you certainly know a lot of what I've said. Of course, this is something simple for you. But the more often you hear this, the more often you'll make the right choices in your life. Each of you has something like that. For example, for me, it's my knee, which I injured when I jumped off the horizontal bar the wrong way and eventually had to have surgery. Each of you has some kind of injury from doing something foolish. Write in the comments and share your stories. And maybe someone after reading this will wise up and won't do the same thing. I'd like to ask you at the end to suggest topics for the next episodes that you're interested in, because I want to be more helpful to you. Thank you for supporting the channel, liking, subscribing, and I wish you all the best.